I've become increasingly interested in recent years in the way in which dominant narratives about the nature and consequences of China's rise shift. How, when and why they change, and I think it's fair to say that in a number of European countries there has been such a change in the last sort of 5 or 6 years or so. And it's now much easier to hear concerned and negative voices, and they're louder than they were really not that long ago. And amongst the various reasons, I think, for this shift is a change in the way that China mattered economically for many in Europe. And most notably, the big increase in Chinese acquisitions of European companies, particularly between about 2013 and 2016. Now, actually, in overall terms, this Chinese investment remains relatively low, certainly lower than you would believe if you read some of the headlines. Certainly much lower than investment from the rest of other parts of Europe and from the United States, for example. And because it's relatively new, total stock of Chinese investment in most European countries is really very low indeed. I think in the UK it's still less than 1% of all foreign investment stock. And even in individual years, it's often not as high as you would think. I managed to get figures for the UK for 2019, for example, and China wasn't even in the top 10 list of investing countries. So given that it's not as numerically significant as you might think, why has it had such an impact? Well, the speed of growth is clearly one reason. I mean, if you go from negligible situation in 2010 and see a very quick rise, then that is going to make people sit up and take notice, and that's indeed exactly what did happen. The sectors that some Chinese companies are investing in has also raised the attention of people who perhaps were previously not that bothered about China. The idea that Chinese companies are investing in strategically sensitive or vulnerable sectors. Although you do wonder if there'd be the same concern if companies from other countries were investing in exactly those same sectors. Which suggests then that actually the problem isn't so much any individual investment project or even any individual investor. It's more fundamental than that. It's a lack of trust in the ambitions of China's leaders, what they want to do, what they want to achieve, the way that they might want to change the global order if and when they get the power to do so. So even when commercial objectives are driving commercial Chinese investors to look to Europe, this can generate concern, even if it's not in strategically important sectors, because if it's perceived as making China richer and stronger, well, a richer and stronger China is often perceived as not being a good thing for the international order. Now, back in the 1990s, when China's entrance into the World Trade Organization was being debated and negotiated, you often heard the argument that bringing an illiberal China into the liberal global economy would make it become ever more liberal. And it is true, in fact, that if you compare the Chinese domestic legislation over economic management today, like in the 1990s, there really has been quite significant change. But even so, what is clear is China has not become the sort of liberal global actor that many people at the time argued that it would be, and perhaps really hoped that it would be too. So perhaps one of the great ironies for those who proposed encouraging China's participation in the liberal global economy is that in finding ways to fend off unwanted Chinese investment, a number of states, and not just European ones, are making their liberal economies less liberal than they might otherwise be and less liberal than they want them to be. So instead of, or perhaps in addition to, China's participation in the global economy changing China, maybe it's also changing the nature of that global economy itself, and indeed the nature of the global liberal order too.